Then MJ-12 became the real government that only even the president couldn't understand, and it's like, okay. So that's the weird part about it until you start realizing how sober many of the people are who believe this. I don't know, but there's not nothing here. This is not about Mylar balloons and seagulls anymore. And so what you're having a large number of people waking up to the idea that, yeah, there really are organizations and working groups that determine what you hear from a multiplicity of venues. It's the same message relentlessly.
Hi, everyone. I'm LeeWayde. I'm about to react to a conversation with Chris Williamson and Eric Weinstein reacting to the UFO information that was released in July. I made a video on my YouTube channel where I called the senators for an update. I'll be making a follow-up to that video soon. That being said, for added context, Chris Williamson is saying that David Grusch's information he released originally due to his security clearance is unimpressive. So, here we go.
Unimpressive. That release.
I see.
What did you think?
Well, like I've been telling everybody, these are highly conserved stories. This is not the only person I've heard this story from. I've heard this from multiple people. There are various versions of this secret world which play out as space opera.
Then MJ-12 became the real government that only even the president couldn't understand, and it's like, okay. So that's the weird part about it until you start realizing how sober many of the people are who believe this.
And who claim to have had direct contact with it. And then you don't know what to do. I mean, in other words, whatever this is, there is a thing. It's not necessarily little green men. It could be, for example, that they mock up a floating spaceship in a hangar and then they drag people past it and say, whatever you do, do not look to your left or right or you'll be shot. And then, of course, people look and then, like, mission accomplished. Now people will say, oh, my God, you have no idea the U.S. has incredible technology.
Okay, for some added context, Eric Weinstein is referencing a very specific episode of the Sean Ryan Show podcast, where Sean Ryan interviews someone that claims they see a floating rectangular orb, and it's like a very legit story. It's also a fascinating podcast. I will put the link below if you're watching this on my YouTube page, which please subscribe and like. I don't think that person that's telling that story is lying. I think they're telling the truth. So, and I think Eric Weinstein believes them as well. So that's fascinating. Let's continue.
Say, oh my God, you have no idea the U.S. has incredible technology. And then maybe the idea is you've got a cover story. Maybe you've got your adversary investing in things that don't make any sense. I don't know. But there's not nothing here. This is not about Mylar balloons and seagulls anymore.
I'm trying to come up with a word for it, but it's like recursive false flags.
Yeah.
In a way, where the goal is not to give or hide truth.
The goal
is to fire hose with information so much that the truth can no longer be discerned.
It's a haystack of bullshit to make sure that any needle is very difficult to find. It is.
Yes. Bullshit haystacking. I love it. Yeah.
Okay. So they haystack the crap out of this thing. I have no question that there was something that was used to develop U.S. aircraft like the B-2 bomber and the SR-71 Blackbird. So if you see something crazy in the sky, better that you think it's a UFO from outer space than some advanced thing from Lockheed. I have no question that we use this to deal with things like the Chinese balloon shoot down, where we shot down several things in a week and we couldn't recover debris from any of them. I mean, come on, guys.
Come on, guys.
Maybe the idea is that this is a head fake to our adversaries to develop the wrong things and to use their treasure on things that won't work. Maybe there's a secret program where some of this stuff is actually real and true, and we're not allowed to know it because it would be too mind-blowing. Maybe there's a cult inside of our government that has replaced angels with saucer-shaped aircraft. Whatever this thing is, it's being used for many different purposes. There's something here. We just don't know what.
He makes a beautiful reference to the princess and the pea. You know, the princess can feel the disturbance, but she can't tell what it is. I think we live on a prison planet controlled by some kind of extraterrestrial or alien force. Some people think it's a demon. And it's essentially a prison planet. It's a third dimension prison in the third dimension. And I understand the implications of that. You sound crazy right off the bat, and I understand that. And Eric Weinstein understands that well enough to not say whatever he thinks it is. He's smart enough to just go, it's not nothing. And maybe he has genuinely no idea. I would love to see, this is where I struggle. I would love to see really, really smart people's thoughts on Dr. Courtney Brown's conversations with Harvey, which are, again, on my YouTube channel. There's a small clip at the bottom of the rabbit hole. Anyway, I'll continue with the thoughts of this video, because the point that I'm trying to illustrate, which they're about to articulate perfectly, is nobody knows what's going on, but something is going on. Maybe we should all stop rolling over and accepting what they tell us on the news. Maybe that's what we should do.
The princess feels a disturbance. And you can't say what the disturbance is. Maybe it's a golf ball. Maybe it's a cantaloupe. Maybe it's a banana. But whatever it is, there's something wrong with the mattress.
Yeah, it seems to me this fire hosing, the goal of uncertainty.
Right. How do things muddle out? Who wins in a muddle is a great question we're not taught to ask. Sorry to jump in on
No,
that, but
tell
I
me
just
more.
Always look for who is trying to muddle to win. Like, very often you're in a dispute with entrenched status quo, and somebody will say, well, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree on this one. Like, oh, well, who wins if we agree to disagree? Oh, it's you. Right?
Yeah.
This is like an old principle of mine, which is that you can always tell who's guilty by who first declares a time of healing.
Why? Why is that a razor to use?
Oh, because if you do something wrong and the public is clamoring for your blood, you say, there's been too much blame and finger pointing on all sides.
At me.
I think what we need is to come together and declare a time of healing.
For me.
Right. So I believe that in general, whoever declares a time of healing is suspect number one.
That's a very nice razor to use. I wonder about this. Oh, how would you say? Epidemic of uncertainty.
Brilliant. Speaking my language.
And I wonder how, first off, how as an individual you are supposed to put up any kind of effective defense. To just take some sovereignty, being, an agentic individual.
Right.
And secondly, I wonder what the end goal is. I understand why uncertainty would be useful for manipulation, because if people can't discern truth from untruth, it can be easy to poke them and prod them and float them in particular directions. Right. But it also seems like, I don't know, kind of also useless as well, that some people, non-insignificant, large cohort of people will just reject it entirely, which actually
they're doing.
Which actually makes it more chaotic and more unruly. So it makes me think, well, maybe if this is the case, if the fire hosing is happening,
right,
this epidemic of uncertainty, maybe the outcomes were predicted but haven't manifest in the way that was intended. Maybe there's more of a rebellious streak in...
Say more about that. I'm not trying to understand you.
That if you make the public very uncertain about most things by overloading them with information, or by even it doesn't even need to be coordination. It could be a byproduct of having 24/7 access to the entire world's population through Twitter and Instagram stories and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
There is so much I can no longer discern, even due to a multiplicity of opinions that's not coordinated to be a multiplicity that go in opposite directions.
Right.
If it was coordinated, the outcomes that are occurring at the moment, a lot of the time don't seem to be happening with people just, roll over, tell me exactly what to do. There is a massive non-insignificant cohort of people that say, I'm checking out and I now no longer trust anybody at all. And
Right.
that doesn't
Or
seem,
anything.
yes, and that doesn't seem to be, if the goal was ease of control, that doesn't seem to be effective for the person that wanted that or the group that wanted that to be the outcome.
I'm going to interject my thoughts right here because I disagree. I don't believe the goal is ease of control of the individual because they already have control of all of the systems and institutions. They don't need control of you. You have free will. What they need control of is everything that you have access to, which they already have control of, and therefore that's not their goal. Their goal is to confuse and isolate the individual and also put them at odds with their fellow man. So that is why everything is so hyper-polarized and why no one can discern the truth, because that is the actual goal. Split you up, divide, conquer. If all of you are dumb and don't know what's going on, we will continue to control things and none of you will be able to be the wiser.
First of all, I'm really glad to get a question about this as a sea change, which is that our lives have become wall-to-wall uncertainty. We can't discern. If the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor today, we would spend 10 years discussing whether it was a false flag, whether it was actually the Japanese, whether there was any attack, whether it was a soundstage, whether it was a psyop, whether it was right now, the main institutions of our society have abdicated their role for public-spirited adjudication of what is true based on expertise.
I will translate that for those of you who are like, what? I need a thesaurus for that sentence. Okay, he's saying the institutions have abdicated, which means like the colleges, national science, all the institutions, college, government, everything has abdicated, which I believe means failed their role for the adjudication based on authority. Jeez, that's a complicated sentence. But I think he's saying the government, science, colleges, all of the institutions have failed their role for accurately defining what is correct information based on authority, which has caused everyone to be confused about everything. So, for example, you could think of certain illnesses that the information that was publicly available was drastically contradicting what turned out to be scientifically true later. Whew, okay, I translated a very smart man. I'm proud of that.
And so what you're seeing is people coming to hate experts and coming to hate institutions because they're realizing that these institutions lie to them at a level that they've never considered unless they were Alex Jones fans to begin with. And so what you're having a large number of people waking up to the idea that, yeah, there really are organizations and working groups that determine what you hear from a multiplicity of venues. It's the same message relentlessly.
Do you think people are overly pattern matching that now?
Say more by what you mean.
That they're seeing conspiracy where there isn't because the lack of faith in institutions.
Same person is saying that they see a conspiracy and they see no conspiracy. They have part of their head that remembers that conspiracy theorists are crazy people. And they've got part of their brain that remembers that normies who don't believe in conspiracies are crazy people. And they can't integrate those things, right? They cannot figure out how are these things being coordinated? Am I a crazy person for seeing these patterns? Am I a crazy person for ignoring
For
them,
believing them?
For when they're unearthed? What you're seeing is a complete destruction of bedrock reality that if you weren't actually physically there. How do we know that these people actually met in a warehouse? Is this really a table or is it just, CGI? Was it green and we could superimpose wood onto it? Nobody knows what's true. And, if you ask me, well, Eric, how are you dealing with this? I would say I'm failing. I'm just flat out failing, as are all of you. I'm just more honest about it. Some of you have an idea that you've got one lens, which is fix the money, fix the world. Bitcoin, that's the answer. Yeah, Bitcoin, rock on. But no, that's not the answer. Or somebody else says, I really think that we just need to be open and tolerant and realize it's a big world and you just have to give people their due. Well, that doesn't work either. You can't just let everything run riot, or we have to go back to our institutions. With these people at the helm, are you kidding? We have to abandon our institution. Wait, what are you saying? We're going to abandon our institutions?
One final point here. It's interesting that Eric Weinstein is referencing the space opera, right? He's talking about MJ-12, which is like the secret government that the real government doesn't understand. And what I believe is there are free will aliens that are trying to free the human race from their captors who keep them in a three-dimensional prison in the planet Earth. And there are a group of lizard people, reptilians. The chick on the lady, that mother is not real. Same deal. Anyway, they're lizard people that control the human race and control all the information that you see, and not all the information, but curate most of it. And they're controlled by another race called the Orions. Okay. Now, he kind of chuckles, and he doesn't go into the whole thing. He says space opera, because if you start to explain it, as you may have just checked out of this video, it sounds a little bit crazy. But he also says, it's funny, all of the people that tell me this are sober, and they say they've experienced it, which is like, so what's actually happening then? Even if that story is some sort of fantastical twist on reality, like maybe that's, you know, a story they tell to cover up the real story, right? Like, it doesn't have to be true. But even if that's the case, then what is true? And that's kind of where he's like, he doesn't know either. But I think the reality is, I think that is true, to be honest with you. Which is where we are currently. So, we're going to watch the rest of his thoughts to see if he wraps it up with... Oh, one more final thought. I would love to hear Eric Weinstein's thoughts on my theory, although it seems like he's been told it before based off this video, which is very interesting to me. And he doesn't know what to believe, which is... And he's a very smart dude, which is... I like to think I'm smart, but I could be a fool, right? You know what I mean? Anyway, I will link to the full video of this interview and the same video that we're watching here down below on my YouTube page. I will also put a link to the Sean Ryan podcast that Eric Weinstein references, which is a fascinating series of podcasts that I highly recommend. So we're going to wrap up with Eric Weinstein's thoughts, but thank you so much for watching. Please like, follow, and subscribe. LeeWayde on all platforms.
Do you know what that looks like? Nobody has an answer.
In other news.
All right, so one final note here. I just want to say I recorded this video a while ago. So the little part where I'm ranting about the aliens is in reference to another YouTube video, which is from Courtney Brown. And the part that's really hard to discern, and I don't even know how to phrase this exactly, but it's like, well, here's my general purpose with my channel, okay? We live in a world where seemingly everyone is just aware that the US government and all of the governments hide aliens and hide UFOs. Now, air quotes, because why is it a giant conspiracy? You know what I mean? So it's either real, and that really is what's happening, and we live in a world where the powerful people have anti-gravity technology, but don't give it to the normal people, which means, what? What does that mean? That mean we're slaves? Why is the question? Why? I mean, because how else would you describe that? Because here's the implications of anti-gravity technology. Oil, which is how we combust things and move stuff, is no longer valuable or viable as a source of propulsion. And therefore, most of the wars are fought for oil, right? So most of the wars are now useless. Who do they send to war? Your children, my children. You understand? So it's not a government protecting you. They're pimping you out, which is terrifying, especially if they have that level of technology. Now, maybe that's not true. Maybe they don't have that level of technology. Then why this pretend secret? You know what I mean? Why would you stage a giant conspiracy if it's not true? Because the only way that this could have also happened is if the US government pretended that they had this technology and slowly leaked it out as like an intentional conspiracy, which is also unbelievable and hard to imagine. So you tell me, What's your explanation in the comments down below? But also, and here's my whole problem with everything, actually. Jeffrey Epstein still got arrested. Oprah's spiritual advisor still got arrested for child trafficking. And it seemingly is getting worse at the border. There's 84,000 unaccounted for minors this year. Have you guys heard about this? So, and I'm talking about the U.S. border, to be clear. And that's just that I'm aware of. And I'm in, the first world. Do you really think they're reporting on the children going missing in other countries or continents? You know how big Africa is, dude? So, my point is, we live in a world where the U.S. government hides this, and everyone knows it, and or the U.S. government pretends to hide stuff to trick all the public. So that's the only two options, in my opinion. Thirdly, we live in a world where child trafficking rings, which is, it's like, dude, this is what I'm saying. This is where I've lost my mind. How can we live in a world where that is something people, it's like, not people joke about the Illuminati, but people kind of joke about it. Like, oh, the enlightened ones that have all of the secret knowledge. Meanwhile, the government's hiding aliens, right? People that, because you know what Illuminati, what that means, enlightened ones. So they have the secret knowledge, but they're also doing evil stuff. Why? Maybe the people with the secret knowledge are evil, and maybe those people run the world, and maybe Adam and Eve got kicked out of the Garden of Eden because they knew too much. AKA the knowledge of good and evil. Who's really evil and who's really good. And I feel like we're at a point where society is waking up to the fact that the people that run the world are not the good people. And most of the people are good. So that means two things. One, all of the people which are viciously being attacked by the system need to realize that, band together, despite the fact that they are intentionally being split apart. And we need to go to the place where the powers that be reside and take away their power, in short. Thank you very much for watching. Please follow me on TikTok and YouTube and subscribe. And please share this video. And be safe and be kind.